What you see behind me looks like a retaining wall, and to some degree it is, because I used a lot of retaining wall building techniques to build this, and clearly it's not finished yet because I'm waiting on my compactor to arrive. I'll show you the process of how I built this. There's a drain behind there to eliminate hydrostatic pressure that could build up and cause overpressure on the wall here, as well as just all of the excavation it took to remove the dirt from the side of this rocky hill with my backhoe, and then moving all the dirt down here to this new terrace where we used to have just a kind of a steep slope going behind the shop, behind the garage here, and that really wasn't suitable for parking anything. So we cleared trees, created a little boulder wall, retaining wall, and filled it in. It's still a work in progress. Over here I have 2 truckloads of material. One is road base and one is 3/4 inch gravel. So let me walk you through the process so far. I'll put out a part 2 when I'm finished with this, and then I'm going to do a time lapse from the very beginning all the way through to completion build on this shooting range and the terrace over here and how it all ties together. I'll do that in a 3rd video, which will be great just to pull it all together into one. But because we've got so much footage, I wanted to kind of walk you through some of the building process that won't make it into the full build. It's just too much to go into one long video. So basically what we did was started out with excavating and digging out this really rocky soil. You don't need to retain this soil. We've got area over behind the barn that's quite steep. The reason why we don't is it's very arid, dry climate. We don't get a lot of rain. Even when we do get a ton of rain, this soil is so rocky, it's almost like concrete. It's just full of boulders, and it's a really dense soil, so it doesn't really erode very much. It doesn't fill up full of water and get heavy like clay would. And so it's not going anywhere, but I am going to backfill behind this. You can see I've started to fill in behind here. There is a drain back here to reduce the hydrostatic pressure, because there will be, in this fill area, there will be water pouring down. This is going to be 8 feet tall. So right now it's only about 5 feet tall. You can see where I'm going to be putting my dead man anchors here. Those are going to be 8 feet long. So they're going to go all the way back to about this rock. I've measured this to be about 8 feet. All of these ties are anchored together with rebar. And because this post is aluminum and these bolts are galvanized and these washers are galvanized, I need to separate them so we don't get dissimilar metals touching, which could cause corrosion, galvanic corrosion. So I've put this window seal tape on here. And also there is a plastic sheath that goes over, and this bolt, as it travels through this aluminum, is covered completely around with a plastic and then bolted into place. So it is going to be a total of 8 feet tall. I'll be trimming off this excess here. I'm waiting on my Tomahawk Ram compactor, which I just ordered from Home Depot. It should be here in a couple of days because I need to compact all this. It slopes towards me and then off this way and down off the hill there. It also slopes away from the house along this little boulder wall that I built here. So this drain will just run right along about 5 feet down that way. I'll use my backhoe to dig out a little bar ditch along this retaining wall just to keep all the water up against these rocks and traveling out the direction that I want it to go. Using that road base over there to build up level with this. Then I'll lay my dead man post in there, anchor all this together. These pieces are just pre-cut, they're just sitting on here right now. Anchor them all together with the 12-inch spikes that I cut from the rebar. And then we're going to go up above that, 5 more railroad ties above that, and then cut it off, and then backfill the whole thing. I put a photo of this into AI and asked it to create a photorealistic rendering of what I was describing this end result should look like, and here's what it produced. So the way this project kicked off was I started by measuring from the corners of this driveway up onto the hill to basically get a nice, more or less a square box coming straight off the edge of this concrete here, up onto the hill and around, so that as I dug this soil out, I could center that with the center of this driveway pad. So started out measuring that, put some stakes up on the hill, and then I just started digging into the hill with the backhoe. So that created a huge pile of debris and boulders, which I used to create this little boulder wall here, this little retaining wall. Which again, you don't really need a retaining wall, but it looks nice and it does keep it from sort of seeping down. You will definitely get a little bit of silt coming down the hill as the rain washes around. So that's gonna just hold that back. And we've got kind of that little retaining wall theme going all around this house in several areas. So the reason why we're backfilling this is not necessarily to backfill it for holding back this mountain, because again, I don't need that. That's not going anywhere. But it's to stop bullets that will inevitably go through this wall because it's porous. I mean, you know, there's cracks in there, bullets can go through. So with that being completely packed in behind with dirt, we're gonna be really solid. Really, the main reason why I'm building this is so that we have a nice flat face. It looks cleaner. It gives us something to mount our targets to. You know, it's just nice to have a backstop that you're shooting into for all sorts of reasons. But, you know, obviously we're gonna try and keep away from these bolts. We don't want bullets going between these timbers and hitting this aluminum and weakening it. And even though we will have these dead man anchors, that's, you know, that's only assisting these posts. It's not the sole retention system. And this should last for many, many years. If you're an expert wall building guy, I'd love to hear your opinion on what I'm doing so far. Every time we build something up here, we have to take some of this uphill dirt away to make room for whatever we're building. For instance, you know, the barn, we have a huge ice cream scoop out of the side of the mountain. That created an enormous amount of debris, which we then used to create the terrace where the solar array is, and another area across the driveway from the barn for parking, which was already there partially when we built the house, but we expanded it and filled it in and made it much larger, which is great because we get these big trucks coming up here to dump this material, or the concrete trucks or the propane truck, and all these big vehicles. They come in, they have no problem maneuvering and turning around pretty large rigs up here. So that's all been very handy. So of course, when we excavated here, we wanted to have that same effect and be able to use this dirt to create another flat space, which we did down here. So we'll just walk down this way. Right along here, I pushed this back. So I removed all these existing boulders that were here, created a whole bunch of new boulders from the excavation. And then I pulled all of that material off the side of the hill to set this back further to create a wider little driveway through here. See, previously that was just too narrow through there. Now we've got a nice wide berth to take large vehicles. I can bring the backhoe, for example, with that grizzly screen through there. That's 12 feet wide. But I am going to be burying the propane tank here, a 2,000 gallon. This is only a 500 gallon. And just for security and long-term ownership of the tank itself, and also just to be able to have a ton of excess just in case there was ever a supply chain breakdown with our propane. I like having 2,000 gallons, and I'll probably fill it up still pretty regularly, so it's always got you know, no less than 1,500 gallons in it. Then we're going to take this 500 gallon and put it around behind the barn to run our backup generator, so that if the grid ever goes down and we have a long storm here and our solar isn't keeping up with the demands of the house, our generator will kick in. And that propane lasts virtually forever. It has an endless shelf life, more or less. So that's the reason why I like propane over diesel. So we continue to walk down this way. So you can see that this is much wider from the tank over to the retaining wall than it used to be, at least another 5 or 6 feet. And once this tank is buried, then we'll have even a wider driveway area through here. But this is good for now. You know, you got to get to your projects one at a time as you can. But this before, we had a tree here. We had several trees here, actually. We wanted to keep at least one tree to block the view from that window over there. That's one of our main view windows from our dining room. And it does, this tree completely blocks the trash can, trash can's not here right now. It's over on the other side of the house. But it blocks these old pallets and the equipment trailer. You know, but this flat area was not flat before. All of this is the material that was removed from that alcove in the mountain. So. And then we've got this little driveway that goes around to the back, because occasionally I do need to pull equipment down. Sometimes we'll bring heavy materials, like we ordered a Peloton bike and our gym is downstairs. And we brought that 400-pound base. Instead of trying to take it down the stairs, I put it on the trailer on my ATV and drove it around to the back of the house here. So this little driveway doesn't get used that often, but when we do need it, it's really handy. This is my My little weather vane that we look at all the time tells us the wind speed and the temperature, wind direction, and all that. I love that little thing. It communicates via Wi-Fi over to the house, and we've got a little digital display inside the house that tells us real time what's going on. And this is my little retaining wall. It's still a work in progress, but you can see that that's about 4.5 feet up from the original grade down below. Now I did smash my leach field. The end of my leach field had this Schedule 40 PVC sticking out with holes in it, and I dropped a boulder. And even though I had put boulders down there to prevent that from happening, one bounced over my retaining boulder and smashed it into bits. Didn't break it below ground level, and I just put a little cap on it and have a post sticking out of the ground as a marker so I can remember where it is. And over there is the other one that's about 4 feet off the ground. So our septic is underneath this area over here. And the leach fields come all the way out. So that's why I could not expand this any further than this post right here. But you can see that this is a nice little added terrace, a nice little flat area. And eventually I want to build a small garage back here for all the implements and just things that are overflow from the barn that I use less often. The grizzly screen will always, of course, stay outside, as well as some of these other implements that are just too big and clunky to put indoors. All right, well, that's the update on our shooting range and our flat terrace parking area over here. Thanks for hanging out, and be sure to like this video. It really helps the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next one.